If you're feeling a bit stuck for ways to develop your pupils' chronological understanding, then Alan Hodkinson has some tricks up his sleeve. Pupils' chronological understanding in primary history has been cited by the QCA as being an area of concern. Alan Hodkinson is a senior lecturer from the University of Chester who specialises in teaching chronology and has been developing Key Stage 2 materials for the QCA.
I think chronology is important because for me it's the air that history breathes. It enables children to place people, periods and events in a correct time sequence. And I do believe fundamentally that without that sense of chronology that history becomes a confusing mass. Indeed, it remains chaotic until it's sequenced.
Here he encourages a group of primary teachers to try out some of the activities he's designed for pupils, including a lively time machine game, a revamped version of the timeline activity, as well as some literacy and maths quizzes, which can be used in plenary sessions. These activities are designed to give teachers ideas and a confidence boost when tackling the difficult area of chronology.
We use this word chronology ever such a lot, and it appears in all the government documentation and schemes of work, but what actually does it mean?
It's more an understanding of time than events, actually, because children have to have a capacity to understand what time is before they can place things in time.
That's a very important point, yes.
Yeah. And there's appropriate vocabulary as well, isn't there?
Very important.
Linking, I mean, sort of like using the words for the past.
Absolutely.
And relating to the present as well.
The other question I ask is, do we employ the terms a long time ago and a very long time ago?
It's hard language, isn't it? A long time ago for somebody might be what happened at playtime.
Absolutely.
But also for another child in your class, it might be what happened, you know, so like their nan and granddad or something like that.
Absolutely.
So that sort of language is ever so difficult for children to understand.
And what's interesting is when you work with children, you ask them to time a minute in the head without using a watch.
Yeah.
And they can't do it for a minute. Yet in the original national curriculum, we asked them to sort of conceptualise time over 1,000 years. But unless the 1,000 years things is understood, then any sort of display that says hats through the ages just becomes a pretty display, and we lose that historical significance that we're really trying to promote. I also think in every lesson we need to start from where the children are. We need to try and diagnose what their level of understanding, what they've remembered since the last lesson and what they've forgotten. Any other reasons that we can think about?
I think they'd get very confused if they didn't have that sense of when things happened.
Sure.
I know in school I teach as a Year 4 class. It's the bane of my life. They teach the Tudors and the Greeks at the same time.
Oh, yeah.
So I'm sure they think that Henry VIII was Greek. And,
yes.
And it just,
yes.
I just think they need to be able to understand and put things in
yes.
a time frame.
The first activity that we're going to do is we're going to have a look at how we can sort of do a fun activity to see how far children are able or capable to go back into the past. The first thing we must always have is our special time machine hats. See how you go with them. There are clips on the back, you can tighten them up. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set the time of where we're going to go to first. Now the first one, I'm going to tell you where we're going to go. We're going to go back to December the 25th, 2005, Christmas Day, morning. Set your dials to December 25th. Oh, we've got the dinghy model. Whoa, wow.
I found the time machine activity a little bit embarrassing, but I think it's something that if you did with children they would find good fun.
You're enjoying it, I can tell. Here we go, go. Oh, we like it. Come on, let's see, further back in time you go, the better. Keep going. Stop. Very small time jump. Look through the window. What can you see?
Innards of a turkey.
Oh, we like. Yes, what can you see?
Christmas tree.
I think that particularly if there's no experience what time is and understanding time in the Key Stage 1 level, by the time they get to Key Stage 2, if you talk about so and so happened at such a date, it will just go completely over their head.
Teaching chronology can be a difficult area because I think you do need to have it fairly rooted in information and practical things like stories, or as we did today, especially the time machines. That really, really positive.
I want you to make your own time jump, to go as far back in time as you possibly can. Go! Go! Yeah, well, a bit more than that, come on. OK, when you're there, stop. Sit down, draw what you see.
I do think you'd get the different perspective of how children do see time. When some children seeing time as sort of like, 100 years ago is a long time, other people see time as 5 minutes ago is a long time. I think that would work very well. You'd get a good differentiation from that.
Where did you go to?
I went to the creation of the Earth 4 billion years ago.
Where did you go back to?
Henry VIII, because I'm a child at heart. It's history for me. It's
Everybody goes back to
we went together. So we went together.
I went back to the last ice age because that was as far back as I could think of going.
Did you say we could maybe use that for some sort of assessment of children's understanding about how they conceptualise time and in what order and how far they can go back? The time activity is really good because it can be used as an assessment tool. By looking at what the children produce when they've looked out of their time window after their long time jump, we can actually analyse what interests them in history, and that can tell us where we need to pitch our teaching in subsequent lessons. I suppose now what we need to do is sort of unpick this all, to actually see how, from your point of views as primary practitioners, whether this would work.
It was a kinesthetic learning activity.
Absolutely.
And that's always a very valuable tool when you're getting through to children.
How do we keep this really wonderful and rich and vibrant learning going into the next section of the lesson? And I think that's what we're going to move on to next, how we develop this within the development section. So now we need to move into a timeline. I'm going to give you a pack of cards. So some of these people are very special to me. So for instance, there we have my younger brother Simon. But we also include upon these cards some interesting dates that help us locate them in time. I want you to find me somebody who can go on this timeline who was born in 1972 AD. Let's go, who's it going to be? Who's going to be first? Let's see. Yes, well done, show me. Fantastic, would you like to go and stick it on the board? In relation to the timeline, personally I feel it's a very underused resource. Very often I go into classrooms and just see it being used as a display, but it's a wonderful interactive tool that you can get children working with, and I think it's very important because it also sets the boundaries of the time period or the chronology that you're studying. The secondary aim of that activity in terms of pedagogy was to demarcate where the centuries are, and we do that by using a yellow line, and we say to them that the possibility of living through more than two yellow lines is virtually impossible, and 3 is impossible.
I like the ideas of actually having the actual decade cards, and I teach year 6, and I think they could really have great fun on sort of like in the ICT suite, making the cards as well. So that activity in its own right would be interesting, and then placing them onto the timeline, I think would be excellent.
One of the things we can do with these cards, if we're not using a timeline, is play games. You can play a simple game as a snap. You can then make it more difficult by saying you can have a snap when you see the same card, but you can also have a snap with anybody born just in the 1950s. That also makes a snap. Another idea that I find really useful is to take this large timeline and to put it into your school hall. And maybe once a term, the children bring out their cards that they've made and place them upon the timeline. They can have small timelines in the records of achievement that you stick these pictures in and they take them with them. Or small little time rulers is what I've used to enable them to move forward. Any potential difficulties that you could see with these activities?
I mean, you'd need an awful lot of sets of cards.
Absolutely.
So and there were a lot of cards there. So
yes,
in terms of laying them out or children using them, I think that might present some difficulties.
And one of the things I would do is that if I was working with children, I would give one to a group of 6 on a table and they lay down.
Speed reading them as well.
Absolutely.
I mean, that you've got to be really careful about that you're actually questioning at the right level too.
How would you use them on a yearly basis within your own planning?
It'd be nice if it's something that you revisited quite often because that's what will just help the children to learn and see it.
Just thinking, a few years ago we had a history day and everyone had to come in dressed as a character from history, and you could combine that with the sort of ordering the characters. You could actually physically put the children into order, which would be quite a nice thing to do.
I'm going to ask you some questions and I'd like you to write your answer. This is the first question. What word is used to mean in a period of 10 years? Off you go. What word is used to mean a period of 1,000 years? Number 3. What word was used to mean a period of 100 years? OK, stop, pens down. What What word is used to mean a period of 10 years?
Decade.
Decade.
Decade. Decade.
I would like you to put these words in order. Millennium, decade, 2 centuries, 2 millennia. It's important within the plenary to have activities that last 2 or 3 minutes that help you to assess the knowledge and understanding that children have developed during the lesson. It's also a time where we can push on children's learning to develop some of the specific temporal vocabulary that children are going to need as a bedrock to their further development of their chronological understanding. If the Vikings came to Britain in 800 AD, let's say, how many years ago is it since that time? And the way I would work it out is this. I would put today's year. What's the other year that we need? When are we saying that the Vikings...
800.
OK, so Vikings, 800 AD. Take the line, and we're ready to go. Anybody fancy coming out and working that example out?
I think you could actually take it further and the children could have questions ready and they could bring questions to the next lesson, and then maybe if they knew something like that was going to happen, they could just say, I've got my question for the quiz. And I think that would be a really good way of the children having ownership over that part of the lesson as well.
If King Henry VIII died in 1547 AD, how many years ago was that? Show me how you work that one out.
Henry VIII popped with his clogs in 1547 AD, and the difference is 459 years.
When you put people under pressure like that to come up with quick answers, you often push them to the edge of their learning. That's a very valuable tool because it can lead into the next lesson of pairing teachers or pupils together as study buddies, putting a good pupil with a pupil that maybe needs a little bit of help. And very quickly pupils do pick up the idea of the mathematics involved in chronology. What do you see as a positive aspect of that sort of work at the end of a lesson?
I was actually thinking that's
Anyway.
brilliant brain gym to do it any time.
Absolutely.
You know?
We very often use examples from English literacy and science because that's what we're pushed to do. Why not history?
Using the language, using the vocabulary, embedding it in the child's understanding of history and chronology.
What would you do differently if you had your time?
I think it's really hard to differentiate that. There'd be quite a few children who just couldn't do it.
Yeah, absolutely. What we find is that the more that you do it, the more that children get used to doing it, the better at it they get. We can use study buddies, pairing children together. If that doesn't work, then we can actually move it into practical apparatus like, as I say, the personal timeline. So you'd actually do questions that are based upon a small timeline, where the child can actually almost count out the years. And because sometimes they don't see it as maths, they see it as history, some of those barriers go down and they start to include themselves. So to finish, I thought I'd finish with a few don'ts and do's. Don't solely rely on descriptive time like the past or like ancient. We all used technical time today and we use it really well. And I think that that does encourage a sense of chronology to develop. And don't leave the learning of chronology to chance. Let's plan it in. Let's audit our schemes. Also, I would say, use dates where appropriate. Don't be scared of using dates. And finally, employ correct vocabulary at all times. Let's start using it. You know, if we're going to do sums in AD, let's put the AD and BC down. And most importantly, make it fun. So finally, thank you for your time today. Please excuse the pun, I like it, and I really hope you've enjoyed what we've done, and it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
To see some of these activities in practice in a lesson, watch Key Stage 2 History, Teaching Chronology, available to view on the Teachers TV website.